All right. Welcome to Keystone Sessions. This episode of the Disruption Lab is taped in front of a live studio audience. Megan, I'm just going to jump straight in.
Let's do it.
So when you think about all the students who've gone through junior achievement, is there a specific moment, a student, a story that sticks with you that really, truly captures why the work matters?
Yes, I have many, but I do have a favorite.
Okay.
So it was in my first year, a junior achievement, so we're talking 10 years ago. We were looking to put together, a video that just highlighted the impact of junior achievement students. So I had an opportunity to go to Lee A. Tolbert Charter Academy, and I met a handful of students, and I met twins that were 8th graders at the time. They were just really special kids. You could tell it the minute you met them. They had been through multiple junior achievement programs during their elementary experience. And at that time, they each declared in the video that one of them wanted to be a criminal justice attorney and the other wanted to be an elementary teacher. Well, I have had the pleasure of staying in contact with these students. One of the twins graduated this last year from college, and she just took the LSAT to begin her foray, hopefully, into law school.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yes, and she graduated college in 3 years because she went in with so many credits already earned during her high school career. And then her brother is actually at Tennessee State University right now and is pursuing a dual degree in education and concert music. So they are still continuing to live their dream. They had an opportunity to come back to Kansas City this last summer and be keynote speakers at the Junior Achievement National Conference on the main stage, sharing just about how much junior achievement had impacted their life and how they can't wait to pour back into an organization that gave so much to them and put them in a place where they could thrive now.
That has to be so rewarding for you, to see that. And
I felt like a proud mom. They're not my own children, but I basically watched them grow up and they've just become really amazing humans.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And to think, that there are actually people that know what they want to do when they're in 8th grade and stick to it. Because I was not one of those at all.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And that does seem to kind of personify or grab kind of what you're doing with junior achievement. So work doesn't look like it did 20 years ago. Entrepreneurship is rising in a lot of different ways. Careers are so nonlinear. You have younger people are kind of rewriting the rules of what work looks like and what we do. In your opinion, with the work you do, are we preparing them the right way? Are we still teaching in legacy ways that don't fit kind of this transformation that we're seeing in our culture and in society today?
Yeah, I think that within the Kansas City region, I can speak to, that's what I know the best, is that we are making some pretty significant strides forward. Where do we see kids all the time, every day? It's in a school system. The school systems are hungry to make that innovative shift to really, they recognize now we have to prepare students academically, but also for the real world, work, career, life. And so they have made some pretty good strides, but what I'm seeing is that we're unable to scale and or sustain some of the really cool, innovative work that's being done. So I look at it from the junior achievement lens is that there's still a lot of opportunity for us to come in with some of our new, innovative, scalable programs that are really going to help support that. But I think that there is a whole new wave of talent that's going to be entering the talent marketplace. I don't believe they are ready yet, but I think that we are all, if we continue to work collectively together, meaning education, junior achievement and other nonprofit partners and the business community, if we come together, we all have the same goal, is to help prepare a competitive talent pipeline into Kansas City, but we're all working at it at different angles and at different speeds. If we can all collectively come together as one unit to say, we're all in on this and we're gonna dedicate the resources, time and energy, I think we're gonna be in a really good place in the very near future.
So what, in your opinion, has been holding us back from that? It seems like, you were here a couple years ago, and a lot of the conversations that we hear taking place are about how do we, from funders or from others, how do we increase collaboration? How do we support more of this intersectionality between these interested parties? What's missing today, and what is going to make that vision that you just laid out, what's going to make that a reality?
Yeah, so we are kind of going through this process right now internally at Junior Achievement at a local level, but also a national level. So for many organizations, including ours, we've really been focused on, solving the symptoms, not necessarily solving the root causes of the problem. And so I think in order for all three of these key systems to work together to achieve a common shared outcome, we've got to peel back the layers to get to what the root problems are that are causing the barriers to economic opportunity and mobility, particularly for our kids, but also for other people in our community. And so we have to really be honest with what are the root causes and problems, and then where do we have expertise? Where is our niche? What are we boutique good at? And we have to stay in that space and allow others to come in and complement the adjacent items where maybe Junior Achievement isn't the best served, but another entity can really help step in and fill that gap. And the other thing is, it just takes a lot of money to drive systems level change. And so it's going to take a concerted effort from a number of resources that are really going to help create transformation to move forward.
You talk about the need to be honest. We have a lot of those conversations here, as you can imagine, about things like Kansas City Nice or this, how honest are we about the challenges we face or what might need to happen to address some of those challenges. Where, maybe not specifically, but where are some of those areas where you think we're maybe putting lipstick on the pig or not thinking about things through the lens of being honest enough to make the radical change or the transformative changes that you're talking about?
I think one of the things that I've observed is that, let's say there's a project or an initiative that's working really well, and I'm going to use school districts because that's the entity that I know fairly well and work very closely with every day. It's working really well at one school. There's either a perception or the assumption that it's happening that well across the entire system. So across an entire district, across an entire region, and that's not really true. Many successful, innovative, kind of project-based led entities are because there's one incredible teacher or an incredible principal, or maybe you get the dual effect where you have an amazing principal and an educator. But if those people were to leave or need to take a step back, a lot of the times these projects or initiatives don't have the legs to sustain beyond being held together with that one individual. And so I think that's where, we are seeing great movement and great activity towards this, opportunity where we're putting kids in places where they can apply and they can learn, but we're not necessarily doing that to scale. And so it looks great, but we're not really hitting as many, we're not reaching as many students as we have. And so while we want to celebrate what's happening, I think, where we need to be honest is that, okay, you're serving 20%. What's happening to the other 80% that are not currently being impacted by that project or initiative?
It seems like it's an interesting challenge because the things that you reference are an individual administrator, an individual teacher, your example about the two students to start off with, like so much of this is driven by an individual or individuals that when we talk about collective impact or we talk about scale, is that a reality in this space? Or are there going to, and I think maybe the question is, in the environment we're in now, do we need college? Do we need trade skills? Do we need entrepreneurship? What's your take on,
Well, I think we need it all, but I think we need to stop trying to, I'm going to use the word pigeonhole, kids into what their path forward is. We at Junior Achievement are really starting to hone in on what are the skills and competencies that are transferable across all of those industries. And, we've talked about it a number of different times. We've called them soft skills. We'd call them power skills. We've called them,
Sure.
A number of different things. But really where we're making the greatest shift is no longer just, I'm going to date ourselves at Junior Achievement. We're not teaching kids how to balance a checkbook anymore. That's a really important thing. And, more adults probably need to consider that in their, monthly checklist of things to do, but maybe not the same way that we've always done it. But instead of looking at what's the transactional thing that we can check the box to say yep, we taught that lesson, are they going to remember it? I don't know. We're really looking at that application and how does that apply to 6 core competencies that will ultimately set the young person up for success, having competitive advantage when or if they decide which direction they want to go. Because I've come across a number of adults now that this is their second or third career.
Sure.
And so, what they may decide, thinking about the twins that I referenced, like, sure, they may do legal and education for a while, but that may not be there forever. And so we want to make sure that whatever phase of life they are in, they have the skills, knowledge, and competency to move forward. So I think we have to pull back on just teaching a certain thing. And same thing around academics. Like, standards are required, we know that, but how can standards be applied to real life so that if a student says, oh, I love critical thinking, I love problem solving, you probably should consider an entrepreneurial path because that's what entrepreneurs do. But how can we use the space that we have, a very captive audience, K through 12 education, to instill those skills, that mindset, so when and if they are ready to take that next step, they have a lot of application behind them that hopefully they don't run into as many challenges or barriers that others have seen.
I remember vividly when this changed for me. Chancellor Girard, Doug they were doing his installation at KU, and this was probably 2018 or 2019 when he first started. And he was on stage delivering his speech, and he said, look, the era of teaching people to be ready for 7 jobs throughout their career has changed. We now have to prepare people for 7 careers throughout their lifetime, and that's going to require continuing education. It's going to require just a different focus in terms of the skills we're teaching people. And that was, I think, a transformative moment for me in thinking about the future of education and how we do this. So I think it aligns with what you're talking about. You mentioned financial literacy, or you mentioned balancing checkbooks, I guess. You didn't necessarily reference the financial literacy
part of
piece.
Financial literacy, yeah.
It is. I feel like that's one of these big gaps we have with when I see kids that are coming in and they have just no baseline for any of that. And then I see adults that obviously have missed out on that. So when it comes to financial literacy and college readiness, what is the one thing that you wish more young people were equipped with when they left your program or when they were leaving school at that point?
I can't just pick one. I have 2.
Okay.
Because I get
perfect.
asked this question a lot.
All right.
So my first one is everyone needs to understand the power of compound interest. It will definitely set you up for success. I mean, it just kind of compounds. It grows and grows and grows. So I think a lot of people, I hope our students understand that. Actually, in our simulation, JA BizTown, Community America is our presenting sponsor and key partner in that simulation. And that's the one thing that they have honed in on, that they want the kids to leave with, the understanding of savings and how powerful that can be for them. And so kind of compound interest, on top of that. The other thing that I don't know how we teach it, but our 5th and 6th graders in JA BizTown are learning it in real time, is not living on instant gratification. So making a pause to say, like, do I really need or do I want this? And not just doing it in the moment because it's right there, in front of you, but really assessing, looking at a budget to say, can I really afford this right now? Do I need to wait? And so just, pausing on instant gratification. We live in a world right now where we can just get everything, at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And so we have just been taught, almost brainwashed to be like, oh, I see that, I'm going to buy it. And so helping our kids understand that, you always have the power of choice, but let's just pause and make sure that we're thinking through a decision instead of just reacting to it.
It feels like some of these things are connected. So this idea of underappreciating or not being educated on compound interest and how that works, and this idea of instant gratification, like, I don't care what this is going to look like in 20 years. I'm trying to do something right now today. Mm-hmm. There's this social media, I remember when the scroll was first introduced into like sports or news, and it became this 24-hour news cycle, and I'm dating myself, but like when these things first started to pop up.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's all kind of culminating now in this lack of respect for investing in your future. I mean, I saw recently where, Gen Z, millennials and Gen Z are less interested in home buying because they're more interested in the instant gratification of travel and these types of things. Do you think those things are all connected in terms of the mindset of young people, or do you see it differently from the young people that come through your program?
Yeah, no, I do think it is all connected. We're now in the generation where, these children came into the world with a device in front of them. And so they know no other world, and we live and work and play at a very fast pace. And so, it's almost just like you have to keep up. And the only way to keep up is to just make, immediate decisions in real time. It's interesting. Someone asked me the other day about, as I celebrate my 10th anniversary at Junior Achievement, which is crazy, it's been that long. They asked me, why did you pick Junior Achievement? And I said, I remember it vividly. In my interview, they asked, why this mission, why this cause? And I said, well, I recognize that I had the privilege of growing up in a household with two, loving, caring parents that really ingrained a lot of the financial literacy skills. I mean, when your dad is a CPA, he still gives me the look when I tell him I don't balance my checkbook every month. Even though he does it, and my mom still leaves the house when he does it because she knows that he's going to find something she didn't write down in the bank statement. But when I had that opportunity, and so when I graduated from K-State and moved to Kansas City, I was ready to kind of save the world. I went into college knowing that I wanted to work, in a helping profession, and it was going to be somewhere in the nonprofit sector. So I took a job with Project Eagle, the early Head Start provider in Wyandotte County, and it was about day 4 that I walked into one of my home visits, and I was like, okay, I'm here to talk about parent education and child development, but we spent 95% of my 90-minute visit talking about adult self-sufficiency. And it was all rooted in they had just made an instant decision around purchasing something or, whatever thing it was, then we were there to try to kind of clean up, the challenges that had created. And so, some kids, in our community, because, unfortunately zip codes can still determine, your fate. They're just born into environments that they don't ever have an opportunity to learn, about some of those core pieces. So I knew that the best way that I was going to be able to help solve, some of that and stop the vicious cycle was we had to do more preventative work. And so that was, as I get further into it, kids are just learning and absorbing things very differently. And so we as adults have to recognize that, and we have to pivot, because the way you and I learned or the things that we had available are very different than what these kids are growing up with now. And so it's really just recognizing that the world is a very different place and moves at a different speed. And so we have to adapt to ensure that these kids are ready, to survive in the world that awaits them, because it will look very different even in 15 years.
Oh yeah, and we don't even know, right? I mean, that's part of the challenge, I think, is how do you prepare students today for that unknown? And I think critical thinking and some of the things that you're talking about. I'm curious, what are those 6?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I think I can get them. So,
your test.
Effective communication, critical thinking, cultural agility, problem solving. See, now I'm going to get caught. There's another C one. Collaboration. And I can't remember what the 6th one is right now.
It's interesting that those are all, to me, would be difficult to measure in terms of the existing system that we have. But those are all the most important things about an individual's success. I mean, I think a lot of those things point to emotional intelligence versus intellectual.
Yeah. So we look at it that you have to start, very early in their journey. And so, for us at Junior Achievement, we're really looking at, okay, there's an opportunity in that late elementary space to start really honing in and creating opportunities to practice some of the components that fall into these larger competencies. So in our JA BizTown simulation, they're learning about collaboration. One of the greatest takeaways that we've seen so far is that students are learning to work cooperatively with their peers, whether those are the same business employees, that they have, or we've seen schools that have come together. We need 75 students to stimulate an economy. Well, it's a charter school and a private school come together. And so learning to, connect and work with other people they've never met before. So it starts early for us, and that's really thinking about that growth mindset. That's a place where we can start to influence. And then it looks at, okay, how do we start to look at where can there be some transferable skills that come from that? And we get into the middle high school space. And then, hopefully with all of the work that we're doing, it's also going to elevate and accelerate academic proficiency. Because we know, in order to have competitive advantage, you have to be able to read and do math and understand, right? That's why we go to school, to learn those things. And then ultimately, getting them a chance to really apply and become proficient in those. And so we are in the early stages right now at Junior Achievement of piloting a way to measure and track, those competency outcomes. And so it's ultimately going to be like a work and career credential that we have identified behavior tools, analytical tools that ultimately can go up through the four-year high school path, that at the end of that, students can kind of take assessments and determine if they have hit proficiency or mastery in some of those, along with all the application pieces that we're bringing to it. So excited, in the next couple of years of what will that credential mean for our community? How will the business community respond to that credential? Because I think about the power of market value assets and what was started with Kauffman's real world learning. Nobody knew what an MVA was 6 years ago, and now it's like, oh, an MVA, like everybody understands that common currency. Right. And so we recognize we're going to have to develop that common currency with our working career credential. But hopefully those 6 competencies are already things that chief people officers are talking to us about, like, we need this. We can train on technical, but we need them to come in with this base.
I've always said hire for attitude, train for skill, and if you give them these underlying critical skills, then that becomes so much easier, right? I want to shift to Junior Achievement's ability to prepare our future founders, right? So entrepreneurship is a huge part of what you do with JA BizTown and with some of the work you do. Entrepreneurship is less about starting a business than it is about a mindset in so many ways. How are you preparing the youth in your program as innovators? How are you preparing them and equipping them with maybe that mindset skill around entrepreneurship?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we've started doing now is giving the kids a real problem and letting them figure it out. There is no okay, pick A, B, or C, as an answer, and just kind of, I don't want to say throwing them in a simulation, but giving them a chance and not giving them all the information so they can learn to really think through and be problem solvers. Because I think, when we think about entrepreneurship, it really is a mindset, like you said. So not everyone is going to be, and be a true entrepreneur and launch a venture or a business, but a lot of businesses now need entrepreneurial mindset in order to thrive and meet their bottom line, right? So there are kind of those 2 tracks that we think our students can take. So we are intentionally, so in JA BizTown, we give them, here's your role and your responsibility, and here's what the end outcome needs to be. We need you to figure out how to get from A to B. And so giving them that space to try, to fail, to find out when they need to ask for help or raise their hand for additional support, leaning on their peers to get advice and what did you do? How did you get there? And then as we really move into the high school space, we're using true case methodology now. And so bringing real-time, real-life challenges into the classroom and integrating that across the core academic space, but giving kids a chance to really ponder a solution, but more importantly, defend their solution. So yeah, there's probably 100 different ways you could solve this. Why is your solution going to work? We need to understand, the methodology behind it. So just giving them space to think, to try, to question, to be curious is really helping them, start to develop that mindset.
Do you guys ever throw, I'll call them curveballs at them in the middle of one of these things and maybe change one of the pieces. I mean, that, to me, that's like creating this mindset sometime is you can't see around the corner, right?
We haven't done it intentionally, but it's happened.
Okay.
So, when you have a facility, things are going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So, real life example, we had some students in the youth learning lab, and they were participating in JA BizTown, and they were in the middle of Price Chopper one day, and all of a sudden there's water just rolling down the back of the wall. I mean, this was not planned. We had a toilet that happened, I think, overflow, and the kids really freaked out, and they were like, what's going on? And so we're moving them out of the storefront. It's okay, we'll get it fixed. But they really took ownership. They were like, you know what? We need to solve for this. This is our Price Chopper. We need to take care of it. So while we didn't intentionally plan for that, what happened was the kids almost all joined together with the neighboring storefronts and said, well, what can we do to help you? And so the next thing you know, we walk through there and there's a sidewalk sale happening. They had moved all of the product out of the storefront because we were like, you can't be in there, it's wet. Yeah. But they were like, we still have to get to the goal. So there became a sidewalk sale. And ironically, Select Quote loves it when I tell this story because Select Quote is obviously they're helping kids understand the power of insurance and they're selling different types of insurance. That day, Select Quote had the highest revenue they'd ever had because the kids learned how important insurance was. If you were going to have, a catastrophe at your business, it's always good to have that protection. So we don't intentionally throw things at them, but every day there's some random scenario that probably happens that's forcing the kids, to think about that.
Real world learning at its best. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. We were like, can you tell us how to solve this? We would love to understand what our next step is.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I always say this anytime we talk about youth programs. I've judged at the Invention Convention or done things. Every time I walk away from one of those experiences, I tell people, I have hope. Hope has been restored. Mm-hmm. We're not going to screw this up too bad. Somebody's going to fix it. Yeah,
we actually just last Thursday hosted 9 different high school teams, 9 high schools with a team from each of them to do kind of a on the spot pitch competition. So we gave them the problem statement 24 hours in advance. And they'd been working through some design thinking exercises, they'd been, prepping for this. And so they walked in and basically said, okay, you have 5 hours, to solve for this. And you got the problem statement yesterday. You tell us which category you're going to do, food and cuisine, or you're going to do retail and apparel. And then they each divided and conquered. And I saw some of the best pitches I have ever seen in my life. We also can thank the Shark Tank show because I think it's helping kids understand, what a pitch really looks like. I mean, there were 2 teams that came in. They clearly have been watching Shark Tank for a while because they had it down to a pat. But we do things like that in order to not give them a lot of time, but just think, on the fly.
This concept of Parkinson's law of the work fits the allotted time. I think I've been thinking a lot about how do you give people less time to work on a problem because you don't necessarily see the quality of the answer change. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have about it is that, no, if I give them 2 weeks, I'll get a better answer. Mm-hmm. It's no, give them 2 hours. Sometimes you'll get the same answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just kind of force that. So let me ask you, in your experience now, 10 years, mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, it's good. If you were to install an entrepreneurial program in every high school in America, what's the one thing it must include?
I think from what I have observed and witnessed thus far is that it must require the students to work as a collaborative team. There are so many things that they learn from working with others that I think can absolutely be applied, if you do go solo. But the reality is, you're never going to work as a singular unit. You're going to have investors, you're going to have customers, you're going to have employees. And so those unwritten rules, I think, about how you work with others, really thinking about that cultural agility competency, is that we have a lot of students now that, in 4th and 5th grade, they were doing independent learning at home during the pandemic. And, we kind of forced them into that. And now some of these students have, very honestly told me that they really struggle to be around other people. They struggle to come to school every day because they live in a world of anxiety. And there's a lot of mental health challenges that these kids are navigating. And so I think allowing them an opportunity to work in a team and figure out how they move forward, how you get collective consensus, how you listen to other people's perspectives, will really set future entrepreneurs up for success.
Yeah, let me give you another angle to that same answer that we've been talking a lot about. We always say entrepreneurship is this lonely journey, right? You oftentimes find yourself, struggling and internalizing all of these challenges that you have as a founder that, maybe you don't want to, put out there in the world, or, how I make payroll. Those are things you internalize versus share. And we talk about the needs of entrepreneurs being access to capital, access to talent, access to resources, partnerships, whatever it is. And I think we gloss over access to fellowship. And I think what you're describing actually instills in them, through that collaboration or through that community aspect of what they do, that interaction that they have, is the need to ask for help, or the understanding that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I don't know, you've done this, can you help me, can you tell me? And I think, to me, that is one of the more important aspects of entrepreneurship that we overlook, because we just kind of say, it's on you. You're the founder.
Mm-hmm. You got this.
It's all on your shoulders. You got this. Instead of saying, you know what, you probably don't have 80% of it, and you're going to need to continually ask for help, or find mentors, or find that support. And so I think that what you described really kind of helps set them up from that perspective as well.
I think if I were to add a second component, obviously that team component is really important, but we live in a world where failure really isn't celebrated or recognized. It's seen as a negative. And there are so many things in my 10 years of junior achievement that we have tried and did absolutely not work. But you know what? We learned so much from that it's just positioned ourselves, for a better, outcome in the long run. And so you think about, kind of the school rubric, and, you get, kind of a pass or fail, but fail is never seen, obviously it's not what you want, and they're really trying hard to not get there. But there's a different type of fail when you have tried, and attempted and really thought outside the box and done something unique, versus just not putting any effort into something. And so, while, failure is hard if you've made a lot of investments, your livelihood could be at risk. I think there's a space where we need to help people embrace failure.
Sure.
So that you don't just completely give up. Maybe it's pause and redirect, or ask for help, or get the expertise that you need. But failure has become this stigma that is so negative, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. I tell my team all the time, that an answer, whether it be no, is just clarification of where you should be spending your time. Right. It's not no forever, particularly when you're in the fundraising realm, right? No is, no, this isn't the right person or time or thing that we should be thinking about. Now let's redirect and go to the people that are in alignment.
Yeah, it's only failure if you haven't learned anything, So is there a time, is there a moment where you saw a student take something that they had learned through junior achievement and translate it into kind of real world? I mean, your twins, I think, is a great example. Are there other examples that you can think of where someone has been able to take what they learned and move it into the real world?
Yeah, I've seen a few examples, particularly with our high school students. So I was working with a group of students that are in our high school initiative right now, and one of the girls was very, very, very quiet. She's a star student, but she's just very introverted, always kind of in the back of the room. And we invited her to serve on kind of a panel to talk about their experience at this point. And she blew me away. So we asked the question, what has 3DE, the high school initiative, what has it done for you outside of the classroom that we may not know about? And she goes, well, it helped me get my first job. And I said, oh, really? Tell me more. And she goes, I'm really quiet and I'm shy. She goes, but learning to work with other team members and doing these pitches, these presentations, it's really helped build my confidence that I have things to say and that I should say them. So she said she walked into, one of the retail restaurants, to get a job because she just turned 16, and went to her interview really well. She's like, I was so nervous, but I felt like I answered every question really well. And sure enough, they called her the next day and said, you were one of the best interviews we've ever had. We want to hire you immediately. Can you start, in the next week? And she's now moved up, from, she was just, kind of doing like cleanup to now she's a hostess. And so she said, the confidence that I've continued to glean from presentations to, thinking through how to solve problems. It's just allowing her to lead now, and it's reflecting in her life outside of school and making her some money while she's at it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Hey, that's the goal, right? In so many ways. What was your takeaway from that moment? Because it sounds like you didn't see that until you put her in a different scenario to talk about.
I think my biggest takeaway is that, students are all leaders. And they all have usually something really great to say, but we have to give them a chance or a platform to do it. And so what it allowed me and the team to really think about is we don't have to keep calling on the same 4 or 5 kids. We know that they're great and they're going to do wonderful things.
And if we ask them, they'll tell us.
They will, yeah. And so just allowing everybody to have an opportunity to tell their story, to give them that platform. And, I didn't know much about this student, but my school director was aware and obviously had interacted with her a little bit more. And so she's like, yeah, I think she'd be great. And I'm like, let's do it. So I think, that kind of don't judge a book by its cover, it reigns true here.
Yeah, seems like it. Technology's changing a lot about what we do, work, education, society in general. So things like, the emergence of the rapid onset and emergence of artificial intelligence and its impact on so many roles and jobs, remote work, just, what happened during the pandemic you referenced earlier, but now it's impact on how things work in the workforce. What are we doing to prepare students for like some of those changes that are occurring right now?
Yeah, we've had some real life examples. So thinking about our problem statement, our case challenge approach, kids are smart. They're going to use the tools that they have. So, they can type in the problem statement and ask AI to give them an answer.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But what we've learned is that AI doesn't know all the conditions and it doesn't know all the facts. And so while it may be able to offer, a solution, it may not be relevant to this scenario. And so using it as a tool is great, but making sure that it really can answer the question and solve for what's trying to be solved is really important.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then are you doing anything related to kind of this remote work or being behind the screen more so? It sounds like a lot of what you're doing is very much that, interpersonal interaction and the importance of those, essential skills or core skills.
No, we're not doing much in the hybrid space just because we are kind of at the mercy of what the school district is doing. And honestly, what we found is that a lot of the students, are hesitant to do, kind of that in-person, group work. Once they get into it, it definitely, is not as scary as they thought it was. But we don't currently have a big approach or initiative around how to manage hybrid. What we are doing is helping, so we still bring business professionals to integrate into the conversations and serve as mentors and coaches. And so allowing students to hear from them, okay, you're learning about cultural agility or you're learning about, effective communication. This is how I use it in my everyday career and job. And so realizing that, not everything is done behind a screen. And while the employees are like, yeah, like yesterday was my remote day and here's some things that I worked on this day, but when I come to the office, these are the things I prioritize because I know I need to have this conversation in front of the person that I'm going to talk to read their body language, to understand that. So using some of those real life examples just to help them understand that you're probably not going to have a job where you just, sit at home every day behind a screen. At some point, you're going to have to interact, with a real human in front of you.
Right.
And it's your choice, where you want to pursue those opportunities and look at, what those perks and benefits are. But you're never going to be truly, without interacting with a human at some
Yeah, it's I can't tell whether it's that I have my selective listening on and I'm just wanting to hear the things that are biased about the work that I do. You know, I mean, because so much of what we do is drive physical interaction, drive the intersections, drive the collisions and the things we do in the space. But I'm starting to hear this movement. It's happening more quietly, but I'm hearing it more frequently now. Of we're moving towards this people swing. We're moving away from the screens. We're moving away from some of this stuff, and it's happening slowly, but it will start to pick up pace where it's the experiential, it's the interpersonal, it's the doing things in person is coming back, and I feel that, right? And maybe I'm being hopeful because it's the work that I do, but it feels like that is truly starting to happen.
I mean, I think we as humans crave, you know, we all crave it at different levels. So I will tell you, like my pendulum, you know, when I first started out, you know, in this work, it was like I wanted to be at every event, every night. And I will tell you, you know, as I've done that, you know, I'm like, nope, got to go charge the social battery for a little bit. You know, it's been there, it's running low. But I definitely think, you know, whether we are super open and willing to say, you know, that we need, you know, other human connection, we all need it. You know, it's just kind of built into our brain, but we all need it at different levels. And so I think where we're going to have to really be honest, you know, with ourselves is that not everyone is going to be full send, you know, back into it. So where do we compromise? Where do we find that balance so that, you know, we can adapt to the workforce that's coming in? And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've learned from our business partners that are currently engaging in this work with us is that they recognize this is the talent pipeline in the next 10 years. They're already, like, this information is really helpful for them, and they're starting to inform policies around the culture and what type of experience they're going to need to provide to this incoming workforce. When and how do they do recruitment moving forward? So they're learning a lot about it. And for some of those that are retail facing, this is how the consumers are going to engage and react and behave. And so it's kind of giving them like a snapshot into the future. And hopefully, you know, what we think is that those businesses and those partners are going to be a little bit ahead of the game because they've taken an opportunity to really look into what's coming and make the pivots and adjustments.
Do you feel like they're getting that from it? You feel
I
like
do.
You feel like they're taking that back and they're maybe changing?
I only say that because they've told me that. So I actually had 3 of them on a panel in January, and I was like, oh, wow, that's what you're doing? I had no idea. Like, no, we're not necessarily worried about what their, you know, business plans are, but when we asked them, you know, what's the biggest ROI, they're like, of course, you know, pouring back into kids, helping them develop the skills and competencies to succeed, but we're a business. So selfishly, we are also gleaning these pieces from it. And I was like, oh, very interesting. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat in front of a corporate leader and talked about mentorship of entrepreneurs, and most of the corporate leaders, I've got a couple of them, maybe one of them here in the audience, you know, it's when you feel like as an executive, as a corporate leader, as someone in industry, I have things I can give. I have things that I can pour back into. And they always come away going, I took so much away from that interaction. Like if I felt like I was the one on the other side of the table, like learning about how I can change the way I handle my employees or how I face the business or how I handle challenges, and maybe this is too corporate or too structured or whatever. I'm always amazed at how they don't think about it that way until after the fact, but it's good that they're getting that out of it. Let me ask you, Megan, what's the most surprising way that technology is shaping the way Junior Achievement is delivering its mission and delivering its programming right now?
I mean, I think Thursday was a great example. We had 200 kids in our facility, and the Wi-Fi could not keep up.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything we do now is, you know, it's on a tablet and it needs to access, you know, a portal or a platform. And I think, you know, we went literally from, you know, some of you may remember, we had these plastic bags full of curriculum and trinkets, and, you know, you had to perforate all the different things, and so many volunteers were like, why didn't you tell me I had to do so much prep the night before? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I thought you read the packet. To now we're literally almost 100% digital, and so we don't really have those materials any longer. And so there are still, you know, opportunities where we can pull down, you know, and print in-house if we need to, but just making that shift to completely digital, because that's what the kids, I mean, that's what they're that's where they receive everything, right? And even in school, it looks really different. So I think it's just making that transition. But then also as we think about just as a business, we have, segmentation and, customization of each of our stakeholders and how they want to receive information. Some of them want it in a text. Some of them want it in an email. Some of them still just want to get it, through, the social media channels. So just customization across the board has been really challenging.
So on this same vein, like what's the one we'll call groundbreaking technology? So not Wi-Fi or not digital, but like what's the one groundbreaking technology you would want to see in every school right now?
I don't know, that's tricky. I mean, I just experienced today, so our national office shared some updates, and they actually, this may not be news that you want to hear, or you probably know it already, but they took kind of a seminar that we did recently and literally put it into AI and it produced a podcast. And so I think, there's ways that kids just need to learn differently. And so I don't necessarily know what the mechanism is, but we need to have a mechanism that can ultimately flip the switch to accommodate every student's learning preferred style, style that they need to really retain. And so we need to be able to provide that, because the current environment of teacher talk, student listen, and then, regurgitate that on a test, that's not working for us. I don't know who it's going to work for, quite frankly, moving forward.
I mean, the need for memorization is all but gone at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've learned more from interacting with ChatGPT or from any of the AI agents than I had in my entire school career.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm really going to dream really big, we're going to figure out a busing system that gets kids there to and from school safely, on time, very consistently, because there are still so many barriers. And I don't know, maybe that's a bot that drives the bus moving forward. I have no idea, but there's so many challenges of just getting kids to and from school right now that's creating barriers to their opportunities.
Yeah, I feel like we might have just skipped right over that, but we talk about groundbreaking technologies and the need for some of these, core skills and stuff, but we're still dealing with traditional headwinds that prevent education from being realized.
And the school districts have made significant strides. They have opened up the playbook. They're trying all the things, but it's still a really big challenge. I mean, it's just transportation in our community is a challenge regardless. But I think if I could have a magic wand and create some technology or device that would solve a lot of challenges, that would be it.
I want to talk about leadership for a second as we kind of wrap this up a little. You've had the opportunity to run an organization that's kind of at this intersection of business, education, social impact. What, in kind of that vein, what has been one of the biggest leadership challenges that you've faced in running the organization in the 10 years?
I think trying to anticipate what is coming and when to make the move. So, the global pandemic obviously taught us all a lot, but that completely reshaped how we thought and worked as an organization. That forced our kits to go away, and we had to figure out how to be digital because we weren't able to access buildings and get to students and get our items to volunteers. But I think anticipating what does the business community need, anticipating what does our region need, who is solving that, where do we stand in kind of the pipeline of are we first out of the gate, are we coming in behind others that already have some solutions, in play. And so just trying to understand what's the move, when to make the move. And one of my philosophies as a leader is I want to make sure that my people feel good the entire time that we're making these moves. So I was taught early on that really great leaders know what the plan is and make sure their people feel good along the way. And so I really tried to live by those every day and lead by those. And so I think just trying to anticipate, when are we going to make that move? Is it the right move? Managing that risk reward piece. There's been multiple times throughout my 10 years where I've had to make that decision. Probably during the pandemic when we were in the early stages of a capital campaign and we're trying to open a 22,000 square foot facility and everybody's well, we don't know if we're going to give. This could be a 2-week thing or it could be, a 2-year thing. And basically going to the board to say, we've kind of got three options. I'm leaning towards this, but I need you to back me on that. And they said, we trust you. Let's do it. So.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I was thinking about a conversation I had today. It was actually about your facility. I think it was with the crew at IFF with Stephen, and he says hi, by the way.
Oh, yes.
As you've thought about the future of junior achievement and the work that you guys are doing, where do you feel like your leadership needs to go next? What do you need to develop as the leader of the organization to take it to the next phase, the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think pouring into the talent is going to be key for us, and quite frankly, for any organization right now. We talk about this on a national level, on a local level, is that the need for the right qualified talent to step in and take this organization to the next level. That's, continuing to develop our craft, but also training and cultivating this next era and phase of leaders is going to be really important. Junior Achievement has a very unique situation where when people come to the organization, they stay for a long time. And so we're at that precipice right now where there's a lot of people that have served 30, 40, 50 years, and they're tired and they're ready to go retire. And so really thinking about who's waiting in the wing? Who are we grooming to come in? And also I think educating the community, and you can speak to this, that leading a social impact organization is very meaningful, but it is it's a big job, and that we need to help people understand, but there is an opportunity and a career behind that. And so really just thinking about how do we pour into the talent? How do I make sure that we're creating a culture and environment that people want to come here and they want to stay and they want to pour into it, with that appropriate life-work balance. But I think it's really just talent is going to be crucial for us.
Yeah, no, it's so important, and that aspect of succession planning is not something that's always at front of mind because you're in the day-to-day, you're in the water coming down the back wall, or the students have all shown up in the buses and all the things, right?
So many things.
Yeah. So I ask everybody this, but I got to ask you, what's the dumbest thing that you've ever thought of that people might have laughed at that turned out to be genius?
It was probably the facility. So the youth
building.
learning lab. Yeah. I remember walking into the board meeting. So the whole, thing about we're solving a problem, right? That's really what nonprofits are here to do, solve a problem, and then ultimately you've solved it, you don't need to exist any longer. So we had teachers that started calling us saying, hey, Exchange City isn't answering their phone. What can you help us? What can you do? And we were like, we're not affiliated with them, but we'll definitely reach out and see if we can help, because we want to support you. Well, I come to find out, they were kind of quietly maybe closing their doors and sunsetting. But the final teacher that called me, she's like, well, isn't there anything that JA can do? I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe. Let me think about it. So started doing some research. Obviously hadn't done any feasibility study or anything, but I talked to my peers, which it's great to have a national network to lean on. And I was like, you know what? We have a product that is very similar to Exchange City, just kind of on this 21st century level. I was like, what if we brought it to KC? There's an opportunity now. So ran the numbers. I walked into the board meeting and had a $9 million idea in front of them, and they literally were like, get out. At this point, we were, renting a 2,500 square foot, office space in a larger, office building, and never had done anything at that scale. And I was like, if we're really here and we're going to make an impact and we're going to create a change that has a ripple effect, we're going to have to do more than what we're doing now. So they granted me a little bit of money to go and do a feasibility study. Well, sure enough, feasibility study came back really promising. And so we compromised and settled on a smaller number, that we felt was realistic for us to go out. But I was like, mark my words, guys, if we don't do it, somebody else will. And so if we really want to be a pace setter, we got to get out there and do it now. So it turned out to be a great idea. I remind myself of that daily, even when, the sewer is backing up or there's water running down a wall, because when those kids walk in there, they walk in shy and anxious, and then they leave just high on life, like so empowered and confident to go take the next step. I remind the board members and the staff every day that this is why we do what we do. And this is why I walked in with an idea and we fought so hard to get here.
Yeah, it's a great dumb idea.
Great dumb idea.
Yeah, great dumb
I don't
idea.
know that I'll ever do another one, but it was a great idea at the
I'm
time.
sure you come up with a few.
No more facilities, though. I
Yeah,
might
no,
be
yeah,
one and
no,
done.
yeah. Trust me, I'm in that mode right now. I get it. You were talking earlier about your why, like why you got into this. Do you feel that why is being realized? Do you feel good about like the original why you started doing this work and where you're at right now?
I do. I think the original why, yes. I think my why is shifting now, and not really that much, but thinking about, when I first came into Junior Achievement, I was really honing in on, this child and this student and this school and this teacher, and now I feel like my why is JA needs to leave a legacy, and that legacy is we're going to really plow through some of these systemic barriers that are currently existing so that we don't ultimately need to exist any longer. And so my why is no longer just focusing on a singular, child or output to, okay, where is our place in our efforts to really transform and be the convener of multiple systems together.
Well, here's to hoping that that why is realized.
Let's hope. I'll be back in probably 5 years to maybe talk about that.
And I appreciate that. So I remember when you were first up here, I asked you if you would come back and give us an update. I think you guys were, brand new in the facility and some of those things. So thank you for coming back.
Of course, always
Thank
pleasure.
you for continuing the work that you're doing. It's so important to get folks ready, the youth ready for kind of what's facing them in the future. So I appreciate what you're doing. And
thank you.
I'm very grateful that you've been able to share your story with us again.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Give her a hand, everybody.